Right now, three things are quietly true about sales in 2026. Something that most CEOs have never been shown, but actually what you are judged on, but also having a verdict on your leadership. So in this episode, I'm going to be walking you through three uncomfortable truths about sales right now. Why deals still stall even though they've closed. You think, why? You're going to find out. Why buyers are actively opting out of your sellers, and why your revenue model has quietly stopped looking like a funnel. Then I'm going to show you why none of those are tactical problems. They are leadership problems wearing sales clothing, and why the usual fixes of all three keep failing anyway. By the end, you will have three specific things to do this week, starting with one question only you have the authority to ask. So first, let me introduce myself. I'm Janice B Gordon, a customer growth expert, and this is Scale Your Sales podcast, where we break down how CEOs and revenue leaders can build predictable, scalable growth. We have the real conversations with the people in the field scaling revenue or advising people on scaling revenue. So today I want to go through some of the harsh truths, and really I mean it with love. and it might sound harsh, but most CEOs do not actually understand the function they are relying on to hit the numbers. We rely on the people to hit the numbers, but not really understanding what's underneath those numbers and why it may not be performing, or why it may not be consistently performing to your expectations. Not because these CEOs are not smart. I can tell you they are smart. There is a hierarchy, and everyone has their role. And many think that this is not their role, even though they are accountable to the results. So not because they don't care, they haven't got the time. It's overwhelming. But it's one of those things you have to make time for if you want to continue to grow the organization. But there's certain things that you don't know about and people won't admit to you. So I'm going to tell you the truth. Because sales has quietly become one function in the business that gets funded on faith and reviewed on outcome, with almost nothing in between those two things, faith and outcome. You would never run a finance department in that way. You would never run a product department in that way, on hope. But sales, the functions responsible are whether you hit the numbers or miss the numbers every single quarter. It gets reported in the dashboard and it quarterly reviews, and it's treated as an oversight. The thing is, you're accountable to that. You have to go to the investors based on that. And that's not quite good enough for you. Today, I'm going to walk you through three things that are true about sales right now in 2026, whether you have noticed them or not. And then I'm going to tell you why none of them are actually sales problems. They are leadership problems, wearing sales clothing. Stay with me. Because the fix at the end is not as bad as you think. And do not delegate this to someone else. You need to become aware of these problems because they're fundamental problems to the future and the growth of the organization. I want to be clear about who this episode is for and why I'm recording it. This is not for the VP of sales. I'm talking to you, CEO, founder. Because I've worked with VP of sales and they're lovely people, sales leaders, lovely people. But the problem is that they are working under certain restrictions that you're not aware that you're setting. And they may not even have the competence to change because that's not what they're measured on. So it would all become clear. So you're the only one that has the authority to change what the commercial leadership is actually measured on. That's why I'm speaking to you, the CEO, the founder, the commercial leader that has the responsibility and the authority. Everything I'm going to walk you through has a tactical fix available somewhere in the market, but I'm not interested in a tactical temporary fix. I'm interested in the structure and the fundamentals. I'm interested in why those fixes keep failing. All right, so let's get into it. 3 things that are true right now. The first is Forrester state that 86% of B2B purchases stall somewhere in the buying process. Not lost, stalled. And here's the part that should really bother you. Even when the deal has closed, 81% of buyers say that they are dissatisfied with the vendor, the seller, they have ultimately closed with and chosen. You think, well, why did it close? Closing the deal is not proof the process worked. And we've been assuming that's the case, and that's why we haven't changed the process. And that's why many buyers do not want to work directly with sellers and reps anymore. They prefer the online experience because they feel they're going to be dissatisfied anyway. So most of what you're calling a win is a buyer who's run out of patience. It's not a buyer who is convinced. And that means that buyer will not buy from you again, because you've cost them a lot of time and you've worn them down and they're not convinced. They're not someone that trusts you as a seller. And that's pretty dangerous, considering all the time and energy you've spent on that deal. And it's misfired. Misfired in a win, so you think it is a win, but it's not. It's temporary. If your board is congratulating on a good quarter of closed won, your churn the next quarter will show the results, or your expansion numbers will tell a completely different story 6 months later. This is why I'm talking to you now. You are measuring the moment of surrender, not the moment of conviction. Okay. Second thing, 61% of B2B buyers now say that they would prefer a rep-free buying experience. A preferred experience is rep-free. Now, your instance probably think, well, that's the AI story, or self-service tools, or digital-first buying journeys. That would be quite logical if it were true. Buyers have chosen to avoid your sellers because too many sellers' conversations have been trained on what to train them to expect friction, pressure, and pitching, instead of what they really, really, really want is clarity and insight. AI did not create this problem. It just gave buyers permission to opt out of the problem. I'm going to go the AI digital first route. I'm not going to deal with it because it never changes. So third, revenue itself has stopped behaving like a funnel. New business, expansion, renewal, reactivation, no longer are separate motions happening in sequence, as the funnel demonstrates. They are operations that happen simultaneously. They're happening all at the same time, on the same account, often in the same week. But walk into most commercial organizations like yours, and you'll still find new business teams, customer success teams, and renewal teams, each with their own targets, each with their own tools, and almost no shared view across the one account. You built a straight line for a business that now moves in loops. And he's trying to understand where that customer is in those loops. Think about what is actually costing you in practice. Your new business rep closes a deal and moves to the next logo. 6 months later, the same account is ready to expand, but nobody is on your team is watching it because expansion sits with a different team and a different comp plan working from a different set of notes. The signals were there. Nobody was in a position to see it. This is not a talent gap. This is a structural blind spot built into your organizational chart. You built this in. 3 separate facts. 1 underlying condition. Your sales function is not underperforming because your people are not good enough. Some of them may not have all the competencies required for future sales people. It is underperforming because the model underneath that they have to work with is not built for the market they're in right now. It's not built for the operation that they need to service the customer. And most CEOs have never been shown that connection. You know, I'm not saying that your sales leaders don't realize the connection, but they're not incentivized to do anything about it. Now, let me break that down a bit more. Now, the incentives moves at this point as it goes through this looking for a sales fix. Now, a better qualification framework for the stored sales deals, the self-service portal for the buyers who want less contact with your reps. That's how it normally happens. The reps organization for the funnel that has become a loop. All 3 of those are tactical fixes. All 3 are sellable, and all 3 are undeliverable for the reason that nothing to do with the tactic itself. So we need to look wider and higher. We need to look at the whole operation. But really from, as I've always preached, from the customer's perspective of what their needs are and what they want. So let's talk about the leadership void, not the sales problem. Here is where I want to direct this directly at you, CEO, founder, because this is the part most CEOs do not want to hear. I'm sorry. Sorry, not sorry, really. Your sales leader did not build the funnel shape or organization chart because they were unaware that it was broken. No, they didn't build it for that reason. They built it or inherited it because they've been measured from quarter to quarter. No one is paying them to fix a structural problem, even if they had the competencies to do so. They will not show you the results until the end of the year, possibly under someone else's watch. So they're not going to fix it. They're not incentivized to. This is really short-term, a structural trap, but it's something that you've set up, CEO. Quarterly quotas, annual compensation cycles, board reviews that ask what happened in the last 90 days, not what is being rebuilt for the next 3 years. Every incentive in the system rewards firefighting the current pipeline and punishes anyone that takes their eye off to fix the model underneath it. So the fire gets fought quarter after quarter, and the underlying model doesn't even get touched because touching it is expensive and is exactly the metric everyone is being judged on right now. Quarter to quarter results. So you paper over it and you move on. Your tenure as a sales leader is what, 18 months anyway? I've not been asked to do it. I just paper around and move quarter to quarter. That's the system you've set up. What do you expect? This is the leadership void, not the talent void. Sales leaders are not failing to see the problem. They have to work with it because they can't fix it. They don't have the time to fix it. They're not incentivized to fix it if they could. They are structurally prevented to even from being the ones to fix it, because fixing it is not what they're paid or prioritized to do quarter to quarter or the next. And here's the misalignment that is actually blocks transformation. Plainly, everyone in the room agrees the model needs to change. Everyone sees the cracks. The CEO agrees, the sales leader agrees, even the board agrees in the abstract, because they see the result of it. But nobody is incentivized, nobody's comp plan, nobody's quarterly review is built to reward the actual work of change. You have universal agreement and zero structural permission. That is why transformation initiatives stall in exactly the same way that a deal will stall. And you act surprised when it does. Everyone nods and agrees there's a problem. And then the system pulls everyone straight back to defending the quarterly numbers, because that's what you're measured on. That's what everyone expects. McKinsey's own leadership research found that the number of critical issues competing for a CEO's attention is roughly double over the last decade. 10 years ago, it was 4 to 5. Today, it's closer to 10. When you are underwater on 10 firefighting tasks, you do not rebuild the model, you just survive the week. This is not a leadership failure of character. This is a leadership failure of structure. And the only CEO is in a position to fix the structure, because no one below that has the authority to change what they're being measured on. And it's not just the CEO, it's the investors as well that need to be aware that they have to give the time in order to restructure and test and rework this problem rather than paper over it. Picture the exact moment as it plays out. Your sales leader sits on a quarterly business review, seems the same stalled deal pattern that you've seen many times before. Privately knows that the fix is structural but not tactical, but the review is 30 minutes long, and the board wants an explanation of that quarter's shortfall. And the fastest, safest answer in the room is always going to be more pipeline, better qualifications, tighter forecasting discipline. Nobody in the room is rewarded for saying the real answer takes 18 months and will make the quarter look worse before it looks better. So the real answer never gets said out loud, quarter after quarter, until it becomes the culture rather than a choice everyone consciously makes. So I talk about the North Star and why it has to be yours to set, your CEO, founder, because you have the authority. Every one of these 3 problems that I've talked about, that I've opened up with today, gets treated as a tactical fix somewhere in most organizations. Fix the stalling deal, the better for qualifications. Fix the rep-free preference with a self-service portal. Fix the funnel with a RevOps reorg. All 3 of these fixes are real, and all 3 of them will underperform. If the leadership underneath them does not hold the North Star accountable, they don't have that foundation, then that North Star is the only thing that will help them survive past the quarters into the future. And that's really having that overriding compass of what we're trying to achieve here and why, and then really picking through what isn't aligned with that North Star, or what the goal is of the organization. Is this working for you or against you? How are we going to change it? The North Star is not a mission statement on a wall. It is one thing your commercial leader is building towards that does not change when the quarter gets hard. Without it, every one of those 3 problems gets to be a tactical problem, and it just papers over the real issue, the cause. Every patch gets undone the next time the pipeline looks thin, or everyone reverts to the old habit under pressure. So here's the honest question only you can answer, because nobody who reports to you has the standing to ask it themselves. Does your sales leader have a North Star right now? Do they have that strength to go up against the board and the senior leaders and tell them what the problem is? Sometimes that survives a bad quarter, or they are simply the most senior person currently fighting the fires. But it's got to be somebody doing it. And ideally, it's you. You're asking the questions of your team, of your VP of sales, your commercial director. And you're looking at the answers really closely, but you're setting the North Star tone. And underneath that question sits an even harder one. Even if you decide today that you need to reset the model with your team, do you actually know, with evidence rather than assumptions, whether the leadership is currently capable, whether your commercial organization has the capability to drive that reset? Or are you about to hand a transformation mandate to someone who has spent their whole career being brilliant at defending the current quarter, but has never had to build anything that lasts more than one? This is the part CEOs get wrong most often. And I say this having sat across the table at dozens of these meetings. You promote the person who is best at fighting fires, delivering on that quarter, just getting just in time. So firefighting into the role of setting North Star leadership, because fighting fires is the only thing that you've seen them do that's generally impressed you to watch. But really, is that the competence that you need over the next 2 to 3 years to set you on a path that's going to guarantee your revenue in the next 5 years, for the next 5 years? But surviving a quarter and building a direction that survives 10 quarters are 2 entirely different capabilities. Almost nothing in the normal promotion process sets you up for that second test. This is exactly the gap that Scale is built to close. It's not another methodology. It's not another AI layer bolted into the same funnel. It's evidence based on your data. It's already done over 2.5 million sales people assessments and leader assessments evaluated across more than 30 years of assessments. So we've seen the trends. It's predicted, validated, proven on the job. It's benchmarked against the world's top performing commercial organizations. And it gives you the roadmap that tells you specifically what to fix, where to start with, in what order. So you're not guessing which of the leaders have the ability to follow this through. Where are the leadership gaps? Can you actually carry out this transition of North Star? Which one is simply managing today's fire really well, that you don't notice the bigger problem? If anything that I've said in this episode lands with you, it's created that kind of window of doubt, made you realize that there's bigger questions that you need to start asking. That capability questions in the conversations is worth having with me, so that you can go into your team and start asking those questions and start getting the results you want, not just now, but going forward into the future. So these are 3 things that you really need to do this week. Before you go, the 3 specific things you can act on this week. The first is pull out your last 2 quarters of closed won deals and ask your team a different question. Would this customer choose you again today, right now, with no contract lock-in? If you do not know the answer, then this is your 81% problem showing up inside your own numbers, not somewhere out in the market. Your job is not to find out why not. Your job is to find out why they wouldn't and to start fixing it. But it really opens up. 81% is a huge number that wouldn't continue to do business with you going forward. Secondly, look at how your new business customer success teams and renewals functions are structured, measured, and compensated. If they cannot see the same account at the same time on the same view, you are still running a funnel in a business that has already become a loop. And every reorg that does not fix that visibility gap will quietly fail the same way as the last one did. And third, ask your sales leader directly this week in a private conversation what they would fix if the next quarter's numbers were already guaranteed. Their answer will tell you everything about whether they have North Star leadership, whether they really have a clear focus and compass as to what needs to be done, or whether they're simply very good at surviving, and on whether they are the one person you want to help to set the direction over the next 3 to 5 years and are able to start that transition that's necessary. If this episode has given you something to act on today, this week, great. But do me a favor, if you do listen on Apple, iTunes, the podcast, leave a review, take 30 seconds to do this, and exactly helps other CEOs, founders, leaders like yourself to have these types of conversations that are so important, the kind of conversation that nobody talks about. And so we continue to paper over the gaps and don't get to the fundamental transition that's going to set you up for the next 3 to 5 years. Thank you so much for listening to this. I really hope you find the conversations that we have on Scale Your Sales podcast enlightening. Your sales function is not broken because your people are not good enough. It is a behavior that actually enables them to function that way. When it's funded on faith and measured quarter to quarter, then it's never going to be North Star leadership that survives past the next board meeting. This is clear, it's really not a sales problem. It's always a leadership problem. And it's why it's down to you to start to solve that problem. So until next time, keep scaling your sales. If this conversation has given you food for thought, follow Scale Your Sales wherever you're listening so that the next episode lands automatically. Twice a month, I sit down with the leaders building revenue at scale. The conversation most CEOs aren't having out loud. Until next time, keep scaling your sales.